October 17th, 1997. The tape recorder clicked on with a mechanical whir. Static filled the room for several seconds before a voice cut through. Test, test. This is Dr. Melissa Warren, paranormal investigator, day 1 at Hollow Creek. The local authorities have asked me to document the strange occurrences that have been reported in this small town over the past 6 months. A pause followed, punctuated by papers shuffling. For those who will eventually hear this recording, Hollow Creek is an unremarkable town in rural Pennsylvania with a population of just under 2,000 people. Until recently, its claim to fame was an annual apple festival and a covered bridge dating back to the Civil War. Now it's becoming known for something else entirely. The night was dark as ink when I first drove into Hollow Creek. Main Street was deserted, save for a single police cruiser parked outside the local diner. Inside was Sheriff Thomas Riley, who would become my primary contact during the investigation. My first interview was with the sheriff himself. When I asked him when he first noticed something was wrong in Hollow Creek, he told me it started with the Morgan's boy, Jake. By all accounts, Jake had always been a good kid, never caused any trouble. Then one morning in April, Mrs. Morgan called the police station, hysterical. She claimed Jake had woken up speaking in a language nobody understood, drawing strange symbols all over his bedroom walls with a black marker. When I asked if Sheriff Riley had witnessed this behavior himself, his face grew serious. He confirmed he had. The symbols covered every inch of wall space. He described them as resembling ancient writing, but not any kind he recognized. The strange thing was, he said, they seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. I could see the discomfort in his eyes as he explained this phenomenon. I know how it sounds, he told me after a long pause, but I'd look at one wall, then turn to another, and when I looked back, the symbols were arranged differently. According to the sheriff, Doc Mitchell had sedated the boy. When Jake woke up, he had no memory of drawing anything. That's when they painted over the walls. This was only the first incident. The sheriff then described Mrs. Henderson's cat collection. All 42 ceramic cats had turned to face the same direction overnight. The Thompson twins began speaking in unison for 3 days straight. Thousands of birds gathered on the elementary school roof, completely silent. And then there were the dreams. Everyone in town reported having the same dream about a door in the woods that shouldn't be opened. I spent my first day interviewing residents. What struck me most was the methodical progression of events, like something was testing boundaries, learning the town's rhythms, preparing. October 18th, 1997. The forest surrounding Hollow Creek was ancient. Local legend claimed that Native Americans had once considered this land sacred or forbidden, depending on who was telling the story. I followed a narrow path, guided by a hand-drawn map provided by Sheriff Riley. My destination was a clearing where several residents claimed to have experienced lost time while hiking, entering the space, and emerging hours later with no memory of what had transpired. The clearing was a perfect circle, approximately 30 feet in diameter. No trees grew within its boundaries, and the grass was uniformly short, as if meticulously maintained. I set up my equipment: temperature gauge, EMF detector, audio recorder, and video camera on a tripod. Then I waited. For 3 hours, nothing happened. I was about to pack up when the temperature dropped precipitously, at least 15 degrees in less than a minute. The clearing fell silent. My EMF detector began to spike erratically. The video camera's battery drained completely despite having been fully charged, and my audio recorder captured only a low, steady hum. And then I saw it. At the center of the clearing, the air seemed to ripple, like heat rising from hot pavement. Within that distortion, there appeared to be a doorway. Not physical, but a tear in the fabric of what I was seeing. Through it, I glimpsed something that my mind couldn't properly process. Geometries that shouldn't exist, colors that had no names. I backed away slowly. As I reached the edge of the clearing, the distortion vanished, and sound rushed back into the world. When I reviewed my footage later, the camera had captured nothing but static. But on the audio recorder, beneath the hum, a voice whispered, "The door is thinning, soon." My next interview was with Emily Parker, the town librarian. She'd been in that position for 26 years, and when these events started happening, she began digging through the archives, looking for precedent. What she discovered was astonishing. There was a pattern. Every 70 years, approximately, Hollow Creek experienced unusual phenomena. The earliest record she could find was from 1787, when the town was just a settlement. The minister's journal described a season of madness when the settlers spoke of a presence in the woods that beckoned. When I asked what happened then, Emily explained that it lasted for 9 weeks, then stopped suddenly. The same thing occurred in 1857. Strange behavior, unexplained phenomena centered around the forest. Again in 1927, each episode lasted exactly 63 days. I was surprised that nobody had connected these events before now. Emily gave me a knowing look and said something I'll never forget. People forget, Dr. Warren. They rationalize. The 1927 incident was attributed to mass hysteria brought on by economic anxiety. The 1857 occurrence was blamed on contaminated water. Humans are remarkably adept at explaining away the inexplicable. I needed to know what happened at the end of the 63 days. Emily hesitated before answering. The records were unclear, she said, but there was a recurring mention of the taking. In each cycle, some people disappeared. Not many, 3 in 1787, 5 in 1857, 4 in 1927. They were never found. When I asked what day of the cycle we were currently on, Emily's answer sent a chill down my spine. 58. October 19th, 1997. I spent the night at the only bed and breakfast in town, run by an elderly couple named the Walkers. Mrs. Walker spoke casually about the oddness that had descended on Hollow Creek as she served me homemade apple pie after dinner. "It'll pass," she said, with confidence. "It always does." I asked if she had experienced anything unusual personally. "Well," she replied, "there's the boy who stands at the foot of our bed some nights. Appears around 3 in the morning, just watching us. Richard thinks I'm dreaming, but I know what I see. He's wearing old-fashioned clothes, like from a photograph of Hollow Creek's founding families. He never speaks, never moves, just watches until dawn, then fades away." She said this with such matter-of-factness that I almost didn't register the horror. "Aren't you afraid?" I asked. Mrs. Walker smiled. "Fear is for those who don't understand the rhythms of this place. We're just in the middle of another cycle. The important thing is not to open the door when it appears to you. That's how the taking happens." I lay awake that night. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway, light like those of a child. They stopped outside my door. The doorknob turned slowly, but I had locked it before going to bed. A soft tapping began. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. I remained frozen, unable to move toward the door or call out. The tapping continued for exactly 5 minutes, then stopped. In the morning, Mrs. Walker informed me that I was their only guest. The town's anomalies intensified as days passed. Water from the drinking fountains at the elementary school ran black for 6 minutes before clearing. Every clock in town stopped at 3:33 p.m. for exactly 12 seconds. On day 60, Sheriff Riley called. "You need to come to the old Anderson property. We found something." The Anderson property was an abandoned farmhouse about a mile outside of town. Several police cars were parked in the overgrown driveway when I arrived. Sheriff Riley led me to the barn, where something had been carved into the back wall, an exact replica of the symbols Jake Morgan had drawn in his bedroom nearly 60 days earlier. "We got a call from a teenager who was exploring," Riley explained. "Says these weren't here 2 days ago." I studied the symbols. They seemed to pulse with an inner light, though I knew that was impossible. "There's more," Riley said, directing his flashlight to the floor. In the dirt, a perfect circle had been drawn, with a smaller circle inside it. Between the 2 circles were more symbols, different from those on the wall but clearly related, and in the center of the inner circle lay a small leather-bound book. Using a pen, I gently flipped the book open to its first page. The handwriting was cramped, but legible. I have discovered the pattern. The door appears every 70 years when the stars align in a specific configuration. It leads to a place that exists outside of what we understand as reality. The entities there desire passage into our world, but cannot cross the threshold without invitation. I turned the page. The symbols are a language, the oldest language. They speak directly to the subconscious mind, preparing it for communion. Those who are susceptible begin to change first: children, the elderly, the imaginative. Then the manifestations grow stronger as the door thins. The final entry was dated June 16, 1927. Tomorrow is the 63rd day. I have volunteered myself as a vessel to understand what lies beyond. May God forgive me for my curiosity. If anyone finds this journal, know that the cycle can be broken. The doorway must be sealed with the blood of someone pure of intention. Only then will Hollow Creek be free. The journal was signed Professor William Hammond. October 21st. Emily had found records of William Hammond in the library archives. He had been a professor of theoretical physics who moved to Hollow Creek in early 1927 to study anomalous energy patterns in the region. The last anyone saw of him was June 17, 1927. Emily explained as we sat surrounded by dusty boxes of records. He was one of the 4 who disappeared during that cycle. I asked about the others who disappeared, wondering if there was any connection. Emily nodded and told me that in each cycle, the people who vanished had all reported seeing the door in the woods. Some had spoken about voices encouraging them to open it. Hammond believed the cycle could be broken, I said. That the doorway could be sealed with the blood of someone pure of intention. Emily's expression was grave as she explained that blood sacrifice had been a component of sealing rituals across numerous cultures. She began to elaborate on the symbolic power of voluntary sacrifice, but was interrupted by the building's lights flickering. Outside, the sky had darkened prematurely. "It's happening more frequently now," Emily murmured. "The boundary is weakening." A low, vibrating hum began to fill the room. My tape recorder began to play backwards, my own voice distorted and alien. Every book on the shelves around us opened simultaneously, pages fluttering as if caught in a wind that wasn't there. When the phenomenon passed, Emily and I found ourselves looking at each other with the same realization: we were running out of time. That night, I couldn't sleep. At precisely 3:33 a.m., my television turned on by itself, showing only static. Within the white noise, shapes seemed to form and dissolve. A voice emerged. "Open the door, Melissa. We have been waiting for you." I unplugged the television, but it continued to play. The voice grew more insistent. "You came to understand. Understanding requires experience. Open the door." I covered my ears, but the voice continued, now seeming to come from inside my own head. "Tomorrow is the 63rd day. The door will appear to all. Some will open it. Some always do." October 22nd, 1997, day 63. Hollow Creek awoke to a changed world. The sky was a deep crimson. The air tasted metallic. Every electronic device in town displayed the same sequence of symbols that had been found in Jake Morgan's room and on the barn wall. Reports were coming in from all over. The forest had gone silent. The temperature had dropped to near freezing. And most disturbing of all, people were reporting seeing doorways where none should exist, in the middle of rooms, in solid walls, standing free in open spaces. "They're not opening them," Sheriff Riley assured me when I met him at the station. "Everyone knows the dreams now. Don't open the door." By mid-afternoon, the town was in lockdown. People huddled in their homes, trying to ignore the doorways that manifested in their living rooms, kitchens, hallways. I returned to the clearing in the forest. The perfect circle of grass was now glowing faintly, pulsing with a light that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. In the center stood the largest doorway I had yet seen, a massive, ornate arch that seemed to be made of living shadow. Through it, I could see nothing. Not darkness, not light, but an absence that hurt my eyes to look at directly. And I understood what needed to be done. Professor Hammond had been right. The cycle could be broken, but it required sacrifice, not of blood specifically, but of someone pure of intention, someone who sought understanding above all else. Someone like him, someone like me. I approached the doorway, my recorder clutched in my hand, speaking my final observations. The entity feeds on curiosity. Each cycle, it takes those who most desperately want to understand its nature. It uses that intellectual hunger as energy to maintain the connection between worlds. The pattern will continue unless the connection is broken by an act of rejection, someone who comes face to face with the unknown and chooses to turn away. I stood before the doorway, feeling its pull. The voices promised knowledge, answers to every question I had ever asked. The temptation was overwhelming, but instead of stepping through, I reached into my bag and removed Professor Hammond's journal. I opened it to the final page and wrote, October 22nd, 1997. I reject the offer of knowledge at the cost of perpetuating this cycle. Some doors should remain closed. I placed the journal on the ground before the doorway and turned my back on it, the hardest action I have ever taken as a researcher. Behind me, I heard a sound like glass shattering on a massive scale. The air pressure changed suddenly. When I turned back, the doorway was gone. The clearing was just a clearing again. The grass no longer glowing, the perfect circle now broken by new growth pushing through. As I walked back to town, the sky gradually returned to its normal blue. Birds began to sing again. By evening, Hollow Creek had returned to normal. The phenomena had stopped. Residents' memories of the events were already beginning to fade, being rationalized away as dreams or exaggerations. Sheriff Riley remembered more than most. When I met with him the next day, he asked if I thought it was really over, not just dormant until the next cycle. I believe the cycle is broken, I told him. By rejecting the doorway, I closed the connection that allowed the entity to influence our world. Professor Hammond had the right idea, but he gave himself to the other side instead of turning away from it. Riley nodded slowly. So we're free. Hollow Creek is free, I confirmed. 6 months later, I returned to Hollow Creek in the spring of 1998. The town had fully recovered from its ordeal. Jake Morgan was doing well in school. The walkers no longer had nighttime visitors, and the birds behaved exactly as birds should. Emily Parker had created a special collection in the library documenting the town's history of unusual phenomena, ensuring that if anything similar ever occurred again, future generations would have a reference point. Sheriff Riley had been re-elected to his position. When we met for coffee, he told me that occasionally, on quiet nights, he thought he could hear a faint humming coming from the forest, but he never investigated. Some things, he said, are better left alone. The town now holds a festival each October, celebrating what they call the turning away. Few remember exactly what they're commemorating, but the tradition has taken root. A community gathering where people share stories, enjoy the harvest, and appreciate the simple pleasure of living in a world where doors stay exactly where they should be. This is Dr. Melissa Warren, concluding my documentary on the Hollow Creek phenomenon. If you've enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please consider supporting our ongoing investigations by subscribing to our channel and sharing this video with others who appreciate the mysteries that exist at the edges of our understanding. And remember, curiosity is a gift, but so is the wisdom to know when to walk away. See you in the next video.